Now, this chart here, lactate accumulation and recovery, it's a bit of a more advanced chart, I guess, that most of you probably won't need to use, if I'm completely honest, but it is quite cool and has some interesting implications. So what this means is really, here you have your anaerobic threshold, and here this purple line that shows you how quickly lactate is accumulating per minute at any given wattage. So let's say that Joe Schmo here is riding at 342 watts. That means that his lactate is accumulating at a rate of 2.2 millimoles per liter per minute. So if he does this for let's say 4 minutes, then we know that he has accumulated 8.8 millimoles of lactate in his blood. So then what we can do with this information is a couple of things. This is quite useful information for both race decisions, like when you actually know how much different efforts will cost you in terms of lactate accumulation, and perhaps you know, especially if you have done some lactate testing, what your maximum sustainable lactate levels are, which is of course individual. Then that can help you know whether to go with a breakaway or not, whether to initiate a breakaway, that sort of thing. So this is especially useful in those in cycling events and perhaps draft legal triathlon if you're more on the elite end of things. And now on the flip side, we also hear this chart, the green line is called lack of pyruvate, but we can simply see this as how quickly are you getting rid of processing lactate and getting rid of lactate in your bloodstream. So here we can actually see that one interesting application is that we see that when you do an interval workout, the fastest way to get rid of lactate is not to soft pedal at 100 watts for Joe here, but it's actually to go at close to 200 watts, because at that power, he's going to get rid of 0.7 millimoles per liter per minute, whereas at 100 watts, that's going to be down to 0.45. So what we can do here is when we design interval workouts, if we know that we're going to fatigue at a certain lactate level, for example, which we might find with experience. If you can, without even taking lactate samples, if you do an interval workout and you find that, okay, the fifth interval, I didn't get through it, then you can go back and retrospectively calculate what was your power outputs. So how much lactate did you accumulate? What were your recoveries and how intensely did you do the recoveries? So then you can find out how much lactate you got rid of during those recoveries. And then that way you can sort of calculate what your lactate was when you finally had to quit due to fatigue. And then when you have that experience, you have done that, you can tailor your interval workouts to make sure that you will get through them without fatiguing too much. And of course, if you're somebody who is racing events like criterium races, cyclocross, those sorts of more punchy events where you actually need to practice the ability to produce and process lactate a lot, then this is especially important, because in those VO2 max intervals, perhaps you're not really going to fatigue from too much lactate in the blood if you use standard VO2 max workouts. But in those workouts where you try to go really, really hard and you accumulate a lot of lactate really quickly, then you really need to, and to be able to reproduce those efforts with a high quality, and which is your goal with those more glycolytic efforts. If you are actually, for example, working on increasing your VLA max, let's say that Joe here wants to get into cyclocross racing and he wants to improve his VLA max because he knows that that's needed at that type of racing. Then he wants to do efforts. Let's say he does efforts in the 30 to 60 second range at a very high power output and close to 400 watts or something. Then knowing how much lactate he accumulates there, that's going to then help him decide how long recoveries should he take so that he can reproduce those efforts and still get up to that power output. Because what he doesn't want to do is to make the recoveries too short or at the wrong intensity, so that he has to do the rest of the intervals in a too fatigued state so that he actually won't be able to hit that intensity. Because when you do that sort of training, you need to be able to produce power and do the intervals with quality. So some interesting applications here, definitely on the more advanced side of things for the most advanced users, but it can for sure be useful to know about your lactate accumulation and recovery.